It was late 86, early 87, and the early days of my research and communications with another reality, in particular the spirit world, that by natural process my dreams became very vivid and far more real. At that time, one of the many secrets revealed to me was of this type of dream and their true importance, in which, through them, I learned much more than I could ever have expected. Although most of these dreams had something to do with myself and those around me, that led to depths that I did not quite understand at the time, yet one dream in particular not only stood out, but changed everything. In fact, born with this particular dream came the driving force that created a cause that I knew would remain with me for the rest of my life. As I now recall, I became aware that I was trying very hard to push my head through a kind of tough, long, wide and dull green webbing. Although it was a struggle fighting my way through this strange webbing, pushing through it with the crown of my head, yet I managed to do this, but did so being driven to it by some deep inner force that I did not understand. However, once I had broken through, I found myself in a kind of shaft from which I could easily step out into the open. The first thing I noticed was the crisp, clean, fresh air, and how it reached easily into the deepest part of my lungs, and how just breathing it was exhilarating. The second was the blue, almost cloudless sky under the not too hot blazing sun that was surprisingly very easy on the eye. The third was the luxurious green. Everything was green, but it was a kind of green that was almost blue, that only the most healthy green has. There were no roads, but everywhere was very well kept, with well-attended fields and their easy-to-walk pathways etched very carefully and artfully through them. They were laid in a definite geometric symmetry that I didn't understand, but somehow knew that it was important that they were. So, though I had no idea where I was, yet calmly I walked. I didn't know why or how, yet I knew it was okay, and I was fine. It wasn't long before I came to a small hill. So, just a few easy steps, and I stood on top of it where, from there, I could see everything quite clearly. And just as I became aghast at the beautiful sight before me, at the same time, so then did I suddenly become much more aware of my consciousness that not only viewed but saw very easily beyond my physical eyes. I could actually feel as well as see whatever I was looking at. Was I feeling myself amongst a subtle but common consciousness somehow? I didn't know, but it felt like it. For miles around me, and still amongst this wonderful green, I could see the most beautiful designed houses of all shapes and sizes, built of all kinds of materials in different shaped fronts and rooftops, where each one was a breathtaking work of art with an individual, non-commonplace personality all its own. No house or home resembled another, and none were too close to its neighbour. This was because each house had ample enough space around it so that, though I didn't see any, there was more than enough space for a couple of horses to exercise. But then, to me, and because of our various artistic planting and building, each garden was an award winner in its own right. Looking at those gardens was truly magnetizing, and I could easily see that so much love, care, time and patience had been spent on them all. There were deeply healthy trees of all kinds lining the streets, that had also been beautifully designed and aesthetically planted in avenues to afford shade and to house a peaceful wildlife where all were greatly admired. They were all cared for and appreciated. In fact, instinctively, I knew that everything and everyone was also treated in this way, where I could also sense an easy, great sense of oneness about the place. It was a community that didn't grab space. It didn't block any view and did not impinge in any way its neighbour. Although opulence and abundance was all around me, yet I also somehow knew that it had nothing to do with money, but everything to do with balance. Ecological, individual, group and natural balance in all things and in all ways, whereby those living there lived in harmony with nature, spirit, the physical and the material as well as each other, where nothing and no one and no element was out of kilter. This place was by far the most beautiful, wonderful thing I have ever seen or could even possibly imagine. And so, as I came to realize that this vision was beyond any dream level of mine, I knew without doubt that this was very real and not in the least imaginary. But this didn't stop or even slow down my now ferocious curiosity, so I continued. There were people around. One couple I saw was walking nearby holding hands. At first I didn't see anything unusual about them, but upon closer inspection, which they didn't mind at all, I felt rather than saw that she was around 400 years old and he was a lot younger, perhaps in his 40th year or so. Marriage, I felt, did not exist. You were either together or you were not. However, with everyone now being able to see and be with their true person, each carrying no emotional baggage and nothing hidden, then seldom were any of them with the wrong one and were usually together for, well, much longer than physical life if they wished. Also, if they wished, physical life didn't end for them either. However, not everyone wanted or needed their one, but were more than content to continue alone, though no one really was alone anyway. And since sex was legalized a long time ago, that too was not an issue. Thus, pornography, pedophilia, or prostitution had not existed for a long time. And because sex was legalized, treated as the natural human function that it really is, that had nothing to do with religion, that they had a completely different attitude and take on it that utterly killed out all sex criminals and aberrations of every kind. Speaking of which, there were no religions that I could see, no churches, no mosques, nothing. They may have been there, but I didn't see any. There again, it came to me that the whole world was its own church with one religion that created a oneness and a closeness that no religion before it ever created, and where each man, woman and child represented in their own right their sovereignty as God created them. Meanwhile, their age meant nothing to either of this couple that I was studying. Only their love for each other mattered, which was patently obvious to all. They were not the only ones, for almost everyone had found their one. But just by observing them, I came to understand that medical science and technology had taken such a leap forward that any age could be reversed, thereby creating in itself physical immortality. But that was not all, for no matter where else I looked, not once did I see any person of any age that could not be described as anything less than perfect in looks, in being, and completely individual in every way, and in their own chosen way too. Each person designed and occupied the body of their choice, and should the need ever have arisen, then they would change parts, or even the whole body at any time they wished, and they could do so without any pain or discomfort. However, even though there was immortality, yet no one was forced to remain here on earth if they didn't want to. They could leave any time they wished to go elsewhere, that is, to live in heaven for a while, or move to somewhere else, say, another planet, to become and experience the life of another being. But when they did leave us, and so left their physical bodies, it was never a miserable, heartbreaking time, but a completely joyous one. Death had nothing to do with an end as such, but always a new beginning, and was celebrated as such. In fact, it was not death, but a glorious transcendence that always led to much greater things in this vast, so vast universe. Everywhere I looked, people lived in harmony and were absolutely happy, and where no one was above or below any other, they were completely equal and at one with each other. Although there was some kind of credit system, yet it did not have anything even remotely to do with the monetary system with which we live with today. It confused me as to how this worked, but it seemed to me that this credit system was more to do with personal achievement rather than have something to spend. This was because, as I also knew, no one paid for anything either, save the effort to invent, create and make the thing, whatever the thing was, yet nothing cost anything to make or to receive. It was just there whenever it was needed. There were no criminals of any kind, for it was understood that should harm come to one, then it came to all. People understood that when something is wrongfully taken, then it was wrongfully taken from all, even the criminal. So there was no crime. There were no police, no accidents, and so no fire brigade, no hospitals, no inland, sea or air rescue services. No one ever needed rescuing from anything. Although there were no governmental bodies of any description either, yet there was a kind of central body that represented everyone, a voice for all as it were, but one without governance. They were there to organize, meet and deal with whatever needed to be done for the good of all. If it wasn't for the good of all, then it wasn't entertained or didn't exist. There were no laws because there was no need of any. No one was ill in any way, and neither was anyone poor, hungry, wanting, or in need. No one was suppressed or oppressed in any way, but that each and every soul was afforded the right to expand, to explore, to experience, to come to know whatever he or she wanted to know or experience in their own way and in their own time as they wished. No one was on a timetable or a rota, and no one was subservient to anyone unless they themselves allowed it. So, although there were servants, for example, yet they served only because they loved to serve, and not because they were enslaved. People, I could discern, had jobs of work. However, as our servant, no one had work that they were not blissfully happy doing. As far as I could see, though people worked, yet it was not regarded as work as such, but it was a hobby or a pastime in which it was they themselves and not an overseer of any description who decided what hours was worked, where and when. Whilst for most, work was done at home, yet in the event that a person had to be somewhere in person, then all homes owned a portal that I knew could take them to anywhere in the world. There were no passports, no injections, no diseases, and no borders. No one checked anyone, and they just went about their business wherever and whenever they wanted to, and even for any reason which did not necessarily mean for work purposes. For example, if I wanted to go fishing in Lake Windermere, UK, and then fancied the Mississippi, USA, or the Ganges tomorrow or even the next hour, then it was no problem. I would use my portal and just go, and still be back for my evening meal with my family. Though there were strategically placed lakes and rivers, yet no one fished. In fact, no animal or beast was hunted at all, not even insects. Everything was in balance, and everything knew and was very aware that it was in balance too. Then, quite suddenly, there wasn't so much a noise as there was a kind of gliding, silent whooshing sound, more like the air being disturbed, when above and to my right came a train-like mechanism that was very long, approximately 50 coaches, that was painted yellow with a thick black stripe running along its sides, and travelled, or rather glided along, just a single almost invisible rail that I somehow knew was powered by Earth's natural electromagnetism. It came to me that even though everyone had their own travel portals in which they didn't actually travel so much as appear wherever they wanted to, yet there were still many people who enjoyed the action of travelling at speeds in this way. And this is why it was there. All they needed to do was to be at a station at the appointed time and jump on. There were no fares to pay. Nothing was paid for. It was just there. Although I knew there was other forms of travel, such as cars, boats, aeroplanes, choppers, etc., or rather their like that was powered by the same free energy, yet I didn't see any. It seemed that because travelling was made so easy, that most people didn't bother, and were growing out of it. However, when I say boats, I actually mean anything from small gliding boats to huge things that could hold whole communities in complete opulence. And talking of the sea, there was never any storms that I could see or feel. It was from this that I then understood that the weather was controlled as and when any kind of weather was needed. As it was needed, so it too was provided. Whenever crops, grass and plant life needed watering, for example, so it rained. When they were watered to the levels of sufficiency, the rain stopped. All weather was scheduled when no weather came unexpected. However, having said that, yet there were 4 very definite seasons in every year, the beauty of which everyone thoroughly enjoyed. Everything was automated and wherever possible immediately recycled, including all rubbish and sewage in which there was no wastage of any kind. There was no dust in the air, and even the few clouds themselves seemed live. As I walked further on, I came to another artistic but man-made hillock where, as I walked to its peak, I looked over it to see a large seating area, enough for around, say, 500 people, and a stage. On the stage was a group of musicians preparing to entertain where, for once, though I did not recognize any other instrument, yet I was happy to recognize a guitar in one of their hands. As they were preparing, there were two small children who were idly watching from the bank that I immediately recognized as my son and youngest daughter. But hold on. Although they looked like my own, yet there was something different about them. So without them noticing, I walked towards them to get a better look. But then it came to me that, though they were not my immediate son and daughter, yet they were their descendants that were almost identical to the ones I now know. They didn't see me, but I wondered, why were the others not there too? So, as not to disturb their enjoyment, I backed off a little way to my left and down when, just at the side of the hillock, was a stand-up machine that to me looked every bit like the old-time one-armed bandits that you would find in any arcade, but without the arm. It had been so long since I had any refreshment, not that I had noticed, but when I saw that machine, I instinctively knew that somehow I could have whatever I wanted from it. And so, without further ado, I spoke into it. "One strong milky tea with 1 sugar, please." This vending machine then started spinning its wheels, as one would expect from a one-armed bandit, but showed pictures that I didn't recognize. After only a little while, it stopped spinning and came to a halt. Nothing. Since I was having no joy, I ignored it. It was only an hour later that it came to me that because I had come from another era, that the machine did not understand my language. To that machine, my language was ancient and indecipherable. It then came to me that though there was a universal tongue being spoken everywhere, yet it wasn't English, but a language that had yet to be invented. As I looked around me for what I knew would be the last time, it then came to me that this wasn't all there was to see, for I also knew that high above our sky and living on every planet in our solar system were others, just like us, like the ones I had seen, where we had also colonized all our local planets. To have achieved such a magnificent thing as this, I then knew beyond doubt that we would have had to have gained some kind of special relationship with other beings not of this world. I have to tell you that my heart just soared knowing that we little humans at long last, had reached our potential and had even helped to create, or become a valued part of, the great brotherhood that included all local extraterrestrials that we this day deny or ignore the existence of. I was so proud. To me, this was not the New Jerusalem that Christians expect, but something vastly superior in every possible way. We had come so far. However, it wasn't 1,000 of years from now, but only a few hundred. It was time to leave this place, but as I made my way back to the webbing that I had broken through some time earlier, Something caught my eye, and just as I was dropping back to my own time, I knew what it was. All of this, every bit of it, came about due to one thing and one thing only: my board, my spirit contact board. A communicational board, a board that would reach all realities, a board that had yet to be invented. It was through my board, my invention, that this world and all in it changed to something far beyond dreams, far beyond even the best expectations, to something this world had never seen before or ever will again. What is more, as soon as I dreamed this dream, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had just dreamed a dream that deep down we all own, we all wish for, and not just me alone. I knew that as one mind, one heart and one soul, the world I had just seen and experienced is one that lives and exists somewhere deep within us all. And so it is in this understanding that this now leaves us with a question, and that the question comes from the heart of the one that we all really are. Is there a way? Is it possible to bring our common heart dream into this, our reality? I must ask you, are you aware that everything in existence began with just a dream? You, me, everything and everyone. Are you aware that from the smallest spark of an idea, we all came into being, and this is how anything is created, how it has always been created? In knowing this, I knew as soon as I dreamed this dream that it was indeed very possible. And so, from almost 30 years ago, it is because of this dream and of its sure possibility in my mind that became a cause and the reason why I'm so driven since then to today. I'm driven not to bring this vision into this reality for me alone, but for our innocent children yet unborn, who, with our help, will not know the darkness in which we now live. A darkness far removed from this dream. A darkness that has been with us for a very, very long time.